This is a story that shook an entire family to its roots. A story that began with pride, cruelty, and secrets buried deep in marble walls, but ended with tears, redemption, and a revelation no one saw coming. My people, sometimes the one we despise the most may be the very one sent to save us. Support us by subscribing to the channel so we can keep bringing you beautiful videos. It all began in Ikoyi, Lagos, in a grand white mansion that looked like a palace. The kind of house that made people slow down when passing by, just to stare at the gate and imagine the kind of life lived inside. The house belonged to Chief Ola Johnson, a man of wealth, influence, and authority. Chief had 2 children, Bimbo, his spoiled daughter, and Deji, his arrogant son. Their mother had passed away years ago, and though Chief provided everything money could buy, he could never fill the emptiness that her absence left. Now, like every wealthy household, there were servants, cooks, drivers, gardeners, and of course, housemaids. But there was one housemaid everyone hated, a young girl named Amaka. She was quiet, polite, and always did her work with humility. Yet, she was the one constantly insulted, blamed, and mocked. Why? Because she didn't talk back. Because she didn't have fancy clothes. Because she was just a maid. Every morning, Amaka would wake before dawn to sweep the compound, mop the floors, and cook for the family. But no matter how hard she worked, it was never enough. Bimbo would shout, "Amaka, this tea is too cold!" Deji would laugh. "You village girl, can't you do anything right?" Even the other servants joined in mocking her, thinking that by pleasing their masters, they would rise in favor. Yet, Amaka never reacted. She would only smile faintly and say, "It's okay." But deep inside her heart, she carried pain and a secret. One morning, as she was cleaning Chief Oladipo's study, she paused by the family photo frame. Her eyes lingered on Chief's late wife, a kind-looking woman in traditional lace, holding a baby in her arms. For a moment, Amaka's eyes softened, and a single tear dropped. "Mama," she whispered under her breath. She quickly wiped it off when she heard footsteps. Chief Ola entered the room, looking surprised. "Why are you crying?" he asked sternly. Amaka panicked. "Nothing, sir." Dust entered my eye. Chief studied her for a moment, frowning. There was something about her, something familiar in her eyes, but he brushed it off and went about his business. That day, while serving breakfast, Bimbo spilled juice on her dress and screamed, "Amaka, you're so useless!" She raised her hand to slap her, but Chief stopped her sharply. Everyone went silent. Chief had never defended a maid before. "Enough," he said. "She's human too." Bimbo hissed, storming off, while Deji rolled his eyes. But Amaka simply bowed and whispered, "Thank you, sir." From that moment, Chief began to notice things he hadn't seen before, how respectful she was, how she prayed quietly every night by the corridor, how she took care of everyone's needs even when they insulted her. And somewhere in his heart, he felt a strange connection, one he couldn't explain. Weeks passed, and one afternoon, Amaka fainted in the kitchen from exhaustion. Chief ordered she be taken to the hospital. When the doctor asked for her details, she handed over a small, worn-out envelope she always carried around her neck. Chief, curious, opened it. Inside was a faded birth certificate, some old photos, and a shocking truth. The certificate bore the name Amaka Ola Johnson. Chief froze. His hands trembled. He stared at the photo. It was of his late wife, holding a baby, the same photo from his study. His voice shook. "Where did you get this?" Amaka, weak but conscious, whispered, "My mother gave it to me before she died. She said my father's name was Chief Oladipo Johnson, but I never believed her." Chief staggered back, speechless, his eyes filled with tears. He whispered, "My God, could it be?" He rushed home and tore through his old records. There it was, a hospital record from 20 years ago, showing his wife had given birth to twins. One twin had died at birth, or so he was told. But what if? He called his late wife's best friend, Madame Clara, now an old woman living in Ibadan. When he asked her about that day, her silence told him everything. Finally, she confessed. Chief, your wife had twins, but one of the babies was taken away by the midwife. She said the child didn't make it. We never knew she lied. Chief felt his knees go weak. The truth struck like thunder. The housemaid everyone hated was his daughter. Days later, Chief brought Amaka back home personally. He gathered the whole household. The air was heavy with tension. Bimbo and Deji stood by, confused, while the servants whispered among themselves. Chief cleared his throat and said, "Today, I want to make something clear to everyone. This girl you all mistreated, insulted, and mocked is your sister, my blood, my daughter." You could hear a pin drop. Bimbo's jaw fell. Deji stammered, "Dad, what are you saying?" Chief handed them the documents. "See for yourselves. She is your twin. The nurse who delivered her sold her out for money. God brought her back home in a way none of us expected." Bimbo screamed, "No, this can't be true. That girl is a maid." Chief's eyes blazed. "She is your sister and the rightful heir to this home." The room erupted in shock. Amaka stood still, trembling. "Sir, I don't need anything. Please, don't do this for me," she whispered. Chief's eyes softened. "No, my daughter, it's not charity, it's justice." From that day, everything changed. Chief gave her the best room in the mansion, enrolled her in university, and announced her as his heir. But not everyone was happy. Bimbo's envy grew like poison. She couldn't accept that the maid she once mocked now sat beside her at family dinners. One night, Bimbo confronted Amaka. "You think you can take my place? You think wearing our name makes you one of us?" Amaka looked at her calmly and said, "I don't want your place, Bimbo. I just want peace." But peace was not what Bimbo wanted. The next week, Chief traveled abroad for a business meeting. In his absence, Bimbo hatched a wicked plan. She framed Amaka for theft. Jewelry was planted in Aka's drawer, and when the security team searched her room, they found it. Bimbo screamed dramatically, "I told you she's a fraud! She's a thief!" Amaka was arrested. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. As the police took her away, she whispered, "Truth never hides forever." But fate had its own timing. A week later, Chief returned. The security footage from the mansion was reviewed, and there it was, Bimbo, sneaking into Amaka's room at night, planting the jewelry. Chief was furious. He called the police immediately and ordered Bimbo's arrest. At the police station, Amaka was released. As she stepped out, she saw Bimbo crying in handcuffs. For a long moment, Amaka just looked at her. Then she said softly, "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I don't want to carry hate in my heart." Bimbo broke down completely. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. Amaka hugged her. "Let's start over." Months later, peace returned to the Johnson household. Chief grew ill and called all his children to his bedside. "My children," he said weakly, "this mansion means nothing if love doesn't live in it." Amaka taught us that true royalty isn't in blood, but in heart. He held Amaka's hand and smiled faintly. "You were born into humility so that we could all be reborn into compassion." Those were his last words before he passed peacefully. The day of Chief's burial was a day Lagos would never forget. People lined the streets as his casket passed by, and beside it, Amaka stood strong, not as a maid, but as the true heir of the Johnson legacy. In time, she transformed the mansion into a charitable foundation called the Johnson Home of Hope, a place that offered shelter and education to abandoned children and domestic workers. The same rooms where she once scrubbed floors now echoed with laughter and learning. Deji, humbled by his father's death and Amaka's strength, joined her in running the foundation. Even Bimbo, after months of reflection, returned home to help. The once broken family found healing and service. Years later, during the foundation's 10th anniversary, Amaka stood before a crowd and said, "Once, I was a housemaid everyone hated. but God used rejection to reveal my true identity. Never look down on anyone, because the stone you reject today may be the cornerstone tomorrow. And that, my people, is how destiny proved that no one can stop what God has already written. The girl they despised became the woman they celebrated.